Um, okay,
Jordan.
just go through the introductions. My name's Yvonne. I'm one of the supervisors and therapists in BICS. And Johnny?
Yeah, my name is Johnny. I am a trainee educational mental health practitioner.
And
Uh,
Theo?
I'm I'm Theo. I'm an educational mental health practitioner for BICS.
Johnny wasn't part of the pilot that we did in the schools, but he's kindly offered to join us to deliver Train the Trainer today. The slides will be sent to you. There is a pre and post online feedback, which we will share now. If you could use a QR code to fill in the pre feedback. It's not coming up, Johnny.
Oh, sorry. Here we go.
So we'll give you a minute to do that, and I'll just go through a few more bits here. We hope you can stay for all of this workshop, but if you can't, can you put your email in the chat so we can send you the post feedback form? Just give you a minute to complete that. Okay, the workshop is 4 sessions. Today we'll be summarising those 4 sessions. We ask you to leave any questions to the end of each session. We hope by the end of the workshops you will be able to deliver the interpersonal skills workshops to students in your school. If you need support with doing this, please speak to your BICS link worker. We will start with how the workshop was developed. We have added mentees to get your views, and we also will share ideas that you can use in practice. So how the workshop was developed. So the timeline for the workshop, we initially completed a friendship workshop in a Barnet Secondary School with a group of 10 students in year 8. Following the workshop, we had a separate focus group with these students to get their feedback about what they thought of the workshops. Students fed back that the slides were pitched too young for them, and also they didn't like the word friendships, hence we've changed it to interpersonal skills. We reviewed the slides and redeveloped the workshop based on this feedback. We then had a pilot group with a group of 10 students from year 7, 8, and 9 in the same school, which helped us to see how suitable the slides were across these year groups. The school identified the students who identified students who would attend the workshops, and they were students who found it difficult making friends, and they were also in friendship groups where there was a lot of arguments. The school spoke to the students to see if they wanted to attend. We encouraged the students to take part in the session, to share only what they felt comfortable with sharing. We noticed as we gave positive feedback, this encouraged the students to speak. We started each session with an icebreaker. They really enjoyed the icebreakers actually, and they asked to do some of them again. The quieter ones also engaged in them. At the end of the workshop, we checked in with the students. At the end of each workshop, we checked in with the students. We provided colouring pens and paper for them to colour also at the end, and also fidgets. We made a time at the end for them to do that. We reminded them where they could get support, and we stayed behind if in case they wanted to speak to us. Next one.
So, who the group is for. So the group is suitable for all your groups in secondary school, as friendship impacts all students, whether it's positive or negative. And these slides can be adapted according to each different year group. It can be delivered as a whole class or as a targeted group or assembly style workshop, or even as a one-to-one work with individual students. So the slides created for the sessions will be made available to you all in the future. So schools and colleges can use these resources as needed. So let's look at the focus of today of the workshop. So the focus is as follows. So understanding the link between friendships and mental health, navigating peer pressure and challenges in friendship, building positive friendship with safe boundaries, recognizing signs of emotional distress and managing difficult emotions. It includes like self-harm and like suicidation, and also where to find support when friendships and emotions feel difficult and overwhelming. Okay, so moving on to session 1. So we're going to talk about how session 1 of the Interpersonal Skills workshop went, and this is an overview of what was covered in session 1. So as Yvonne said, we had icebreaker. We looked at the overall concept of emotional well-being and mental health. We looked at friendships and communication. What are the different types of friendships? What makes a good friend? Peer pressure and difficulties in friendships, and also where to get support when needed. So I want to start off by to join me for a quick, almost like brainstorming activity. So if we can go to menti.com using this code 52393070, you'll be able to input some words that can associate with the word mental. So the question is, if you were to ask your students in your school, what do you think when you hear the word mental? What do you think they would say? So please pop over to Menti to put in your answers, and these words should pop up live. Just gonna give a few minutes to see some words pop up. Mad, crazy, interesting. Definitely common things that we see a lot of young people say, like associate with mad or crazy. So I'll give it another 30 seconds, 15 seconds to see if any other words pop up. Okay. So slide, if that works. Yes, so as part of the government's national agenda, we hold a role to improve mental health awareness amongst children and young people. So we wanted to use these workshops to do that. And we also wanted to get to kind of set the tone for the workshop by breaking down stereotypes and stigma surrounding mental health. So we asked the same questions to students. So when they hear the word mental, what do they think? And the words that pop up the most commonly actually was the same as what popped up just now. So crazy and mad. And the overall kind of feel of the word mental is quite negative as well. So the word cloud you see here was generated using the students' answers and also from a list of words found in a study investigating stigmatizing language surrounding mental health by Rose et al. We then explained that the word doesn't always mean, crazy or mad or, like psycho, insane. And more often than not, it's used for words relating to the mind. So we then reinforce this by this new definition of mental, using examples like, let's look at the differences between mental and physical health. How one would go to the GP for their physical health, but if they need support or help with their mind or mental health, they would come to us, for example.
You're on mute, Theo.
Sorry. Following on from Johnny, we wanted to, from this slide, we wanted to get a sense of how the students thought about, if they were finding anything difficult, how they might feel. So we had a general discussion around that first, and then we sort of had a list already sort of prepared for them. A lot of the students said some of the things on the list, which was, feeling sad and down, feeling scared, feeling worried, maybe low in mood. So those are some things we sort of discussed. But you also thought it was very important to speak about what positive mental health looked like. And we sort of, really discussed that as well. So from the list, we spoke about, if you are able to, manage feelings and emotions that you are having sort of your mental health is quite positive. If you are able to cope with changes and uncertainty, that you're doing just fine. And then if you are able to sort of set goals and look forward to the future, that sort of thing that you're maybe that sort of part that you're in life is very good, very positive, and we wanted to really think about mental health in a more positive way. Hence why we included it, rather than this stereotypical type of students thinking it's crazy, it's mad, but really highlighting the positive side of things as well. We also showed a video sort of highlighting this as well, and like normalizing mental health, and I guess different ways you can get support. So we'll be showing this video for a couple of minutes so you can get a little taste of what we showed.
You can't tell how someone feels just by looking at them or what they share online. To the outside world, our lives may look perfect, even if in reality they aren't. I'm always worrying about doing well at school, and with the end of year test coming up, I'm not sure how much longer I can cope. My thoughts swarm around my head, sometimes keep my... Some days it's just all too much, and I feel like I'm lost in space. When I did badly on one of my tests, I just about kept it together until I got home. Then I broke down crying in front of my mum. She listened for a bit, and then she told me that, just like physical health, we all have mental health. It's our feelings, our thinking, our emotions, and our moods. She then said that feeling down, angry, and stressed is a normal part of life, just like it's normal to feel happy, confident, and carefree sometimes. We all have positive and negative emotions that come and go based on what's happening around us, everyday feelings. Good mental health means experiencing negative emotions. It's not always about being happy. Mum can relate to the feelings of stress. So when Mum suggested I take a break from everything and do something I enjoy, I actually took her advice. So I made myself a hot chocolate, snuggled up in a duvet and watched a film. And you know what? Afterwards I felt so much better. Mum should take her own advice.
Friendships. So when we started to talk about friendships, we looked at different types of friendships that there are. Sorry, I can see that there's a missing E off there. And we use this pyramid to look at the different types of friendships. The purpose of this slide is to explain that not all friendships are the same, and for students to be aware of the different types of friendships and the different connections they may have. This is important because teens generally have two categories of friendships, a friend and then a best friend. We spoke about the difference, we discussed the different relationships between them, and this helped the students to understand not every connection needs to be deep. This can reduce anxiety, particularly in relation to popularity and fitting in. We asked the students to think about their friends and where they would fit in the pyramid. We asked them why they thought their friends fit in that place. Some students did not know the difference, what acquaintance meant, so we explained that. We also asked if people on social media are friends. The students were aware that people on social media were not necessarily friends. However, some spoke about how many numbers of views people get, and the likes actually show that they're important, and it's important to have a high number of views and likes because it tells how many people are viewing you and like you. Other students challenged this, saying you don't know who people are, and they're not liking you, but they're liking what you're doing. So we had a lot of these interesting conversations between the students, and it was really interesting to see how they learnt from each other. And I think that's a really good way working of learning, that they learn from each other and not just from us as adults. The students said they had not known that there was these different type of friendships, and it really made them understand friendships better. So here is another mentee, and the question is, how do you support friendships that disrupt learning in school or college? So I'll give you a minute to do that. I know in the first session, it took a while for the answers to come up. Not sure if I've not made the question clear, but if you're in a lesson or within a school, and there's a friendships that are close, but they're disrupting the learning, how do you manage that? Okay, it's really nice when students have positive friendships, but sometimes students who are familiar with each other can disrupt the learning. I can see something's just come up. Small groups, social groups, play, adults modeling play, okay, and staff training. Okay, I can see it clearer now. I couldn't see it so much earlier. Okay, it's really, yeah, it's really good to hear that there's these types of activities going on in schools. And I wonder whether some of what we're doing is what you're also doing. So yeah, it's really lovely to see positive friendships, but sometimes students who are familiar with each other can disrupt the learning. Adolescents are navigating identity, peer pressures, emotional regulation and social hierarchies. So it's understandable that forming and maintaining friendships can be challenging. This can also impact on the learning and no doubt your work. So this is why we've asked the question, how do you support friendships that disrupt the learning? And here are some ideas of what you can do. Be mindful of the adolescent's development. Their brain is naturally tuned to peer connection. Behaviors like disruption may be a reflection of a need for belonging, autonomy, or approval. So approaching these moments with curiosity rather than judgment is better. It's better to validate their friendships, speak to their emotional needs, invite collaboration for them to think with you about how they might solve a problem. For example, saying something like, I wonder if being together feels so good that it's hard to switch into learning mode. Can we talk about how we balance both? I can see you are really enjoying being together, and that's a strength. Let's find a way to channel that energy positively in class. What do you think we can do? We can change so that everyone can focus better, but you still can get to enjoy being together. Splitting up a group in is maybe necessary, but we would advise that this is not the first step, as it does not teach a student how to manage their social impulses. Immediate separation may address the difficulties in the short term, but misses the opportunity for students to internalize boundaries and develop long-lasting internal skills. We often ask about what about special educational needs students. So we've tried to look at the feedback that we've got from some of the special educational needs students that we work with. We're not specialists in working with special educational needs students. We generally do take on students that have ASD or ADHD, but the primary difficulty needs to be mental health. But this is some of the feedback that we've had from students that we've worked with. So helping them with emotional regulation and social understanding and communication, you can create a calm place or a personal box with calming tools. You can use social stories. You can use visual prompts or emotional cards. For example, a student might use an emotional card that says, I feel frustrated, and look at a visual prompt that suggests a calming strategy like take a deep breath or asking for help. You could also use emojis. We use that with most of the people that we work with because they understand them. And just to remind you that the BICS has a Train the Trainer on the 26th of November about teenage brain, and we'll discuss this further and go into more detail.
Sorry, I thought my mic was not was muted. So cool. We want students to be aware of what a good friend looks like, because in their teenage years, their peers become a large part of their support circle, maybe even more so than family. So this slide here tells us what makes a good friend according to the studies out there. So the studies show that people who are similar to ourselves, people who we enjoy being around, and people who make us feel good, are what we would consider good friends. We also gathered the students' thoughts about what a good friend looks like to them. So to students, a good friend was someone who kept their secrets and are nice to them, which shows an understanding of trust and kindness. So we also wanted to explore having unhelpful friendships or bad friends on an emotional level. So we asked students to go into pairs and do a pair discussion where they were introduced to a case study of someone called Lee. So in this case study, Lee is being pressured to take part in by his friends to call people on the street horrible names. Lee is also witnessing someone in his friendship group being bullied by some other friends. So we explored the dilemma that Lee is in. So he likes his friends, but sometimes he feels uncomfortable about what they get involved in, and how he gets worried about being ostracized if he doesn't join in on the bullying. Next slide. So following that discussion about Lee, we asked the students to do this body map activity. So we explained how in teenage years, the part of the brain that is in charge of emotions is more developed than the part that oversees understanding consequences. And that it's very likely that often they'll make decisions based on how they feel rather than considering all the different consequences. Therefore, it's very important to differentiate between feelings and thoughts, and also the physical behaviors the physical sensations that come with those feelings and thoughts. So thinking back to the case example just now, if he doesn't join in on, like picking on that one of their friends, he might think, oh, my friends will think I'm boring, or, and his feelings will be like nervousness or anxiety, and that might present in physical behaviors such as butterflies in the stomach. So I've kind of labeled that as yellow over here. Or it could be stuff like racing heartbeat or headaches. We asked the students to use color pens to locate each thought and feeling that might come up for Lee and color it on the body map like it has been done now. So the purpose of this activity is to develop empathy and for the students to be more aware of how thoughts and feelings influence how we behave. So how we kind of ask them to do those, like to differentiate those thoughts and feelings, was by using these prompted questions on the screen over here. So this exercise will hopefully help them recognize how people may feel in difficult situations, even if they're not expressing it outwardly, or if they are expressing it outwardly, what are the warning signs for emotional distress? So it's important, as you see on the slide here, we kind of ask these questions, from a third person's perspective. So we're asking them, how might Lee think? So it's important that teens are encouraged to consider friendships from a third person or their peers' experience or perspective, because it encourages empathy and strengthens their social skills, which will help build healthier and more respectful relationships. So to further support with understanding peer pressure, you can also show young people this video. I'm only going to show a bit of it because I'm aware of time.
Teens handle peer pressure and make good decisions. If you're a teen or know someone who is, you might be wondering how to navigate the tricky world of peer pressure. Let's break it down and find some practical ways to handle it. First, it's important to understand what peer pressure is. It can be either spoken or unspoken. Spoken peer pressure is when friends directly ask or persuade you to do something, like skipping class or trying alcohol. This can be really tough, especially if it's a group of friends pushing you to fit in. Unspoken peer pressure is more subtle, but just as powerful. It's when you see your friends doing something, wearing certain clothes, or participating in activities, and you feel the need to follow along to fit in. This can be particularly strong if you look up to older or more popular friends. So how do you handle all this? Here are some strategies that can help. Confidence is key. One of the most important things is to have confidence in yourself. When you believe in your own decisions and values, it's easier to say no to things that don't feel right. Parents and caregivers can help by modeling confidence and praising wise choices. This builds inner strength and reduces the fear of not fitting in. Ask questions. If you're in a tough spot, asking questions can really help. For example, if friends are pressuring you to shoplift, ask them why they think it's a good idea or what could happen if you get caught. Hearing the consequences out loud can make everyone think twice. Know your values. Understanding what's important to you is crucial. If you know your values and goals, it's easier to make decisions that align with them. For instance,
So yeah, I'm just going to stop there because of timing. But again, these slides will be made available to you. So do watch this video. It's really helpful in kind of helping navigate those peer pressure difficulties. Yeah, I'll move on to the next slide.
So this is another mentee. And the question is, what support is available for friendship difficulties in your school? So if you could use the code just to answer that question, just give it a minute or so. As you're answering the question, we just want you to think about what's working well in your school and what could be different. If you need support with in discussing this more and thinking about this more, again, you can speak to your BICS link worker. And it may be that some of the things you've answered already are what you have in your school for friendship difficulties. ESLA, Worry Box, Social Skills Group. I'm not sure what ELSA is.
So I
It's
think
an emotional literacy assistant that's been trained. It's primary school. I don't know whether secondary schools do it.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
emotional literacy. An
Okay.
assistant's been trained in it.
Oh, right. Okay. Oh, that's really good, because with some of what we do, both in individual work and within workshops, is about emotional literacy and naming feelings and thoughts as well. And Worry Box, I like that. Social Skills Group. Yeah, I like that. Great. And as I said, if you want to discuss this further, there you can speak to your BICS link worker.
So another thing that we spoke about was communication, and we felt like this is really important when navigating friendships and building healthy relationships. So we looked at these communication styles which are on the screen. So we looked at verbal communication, vocal tone, and non-verbal communication. We asked students to think about what the most important what the most important one was to them before we should have showed this slide. The students thought that, verbal communication would be the most important. And they were very surprised to learn that non-verbal communication was actually the most important thing from the stats on the screen. I said, and in terms of this, we looked at why this was important and why this was the highest, and what sort of makes up body language, because there's lots of things that sort of make up body language that they might not have known. So we had a really good discussion about that. Some things that came out from that was some of the students mentioned eye contact. And people say, it might be rude if someone isn't looking at you. We discussed sort of facial expressions and how that could make someone feel. But also body position, maybe someone not paying attention to you through their bodies, or maybe facing away from someone. So we had a really good discussion about this and the importance of all of these styles, and what sort of parts they play when communicating with friendships. We then moved on to the next slide, which was about, we thought about these sorts of styles of maybe communicating. So being assertive, being aggressive, and being passive. We asked the students these questions. So what is the difference between these? We had a discussion around that. How would you feel, look, or act? Would your answer be different with different people? So these questions were in conjunction of the sort of the scenario that is on the screen. So your best friend tells you someone else about your secrets. So the student said that being aggressive when communicating can lead to arguments, and not make the other person on the other side not feel great, make someone feel sad, and just have quite a negative impact. Students said that being passive wouldn't solve anything because there isn't much communication there. The person involved might not understand what was going on. They won't, have an idea. So that probably wouldn't be a good way to communicate. So yes, students definitely agreed that being assertive was the best way to communicate, especially from this scenario, and especially if you're speaking to a friend. So in this scenario, it says in the speech in the speech bubble, it hurts me to find out that you told my secret to someone. Please don't repeat that secret again. So we spoke about, the importance of maybe saying it like that, the importance of maybe saying it in a calm way. But the students also thought that being assertive might be a good way to speak to someone, especially if it is a best friend, but that they might find it difficult to do so if it might be someone else due to maybe not having the confidence to speak to someone, maybe being unfamiliar with that situation. So we sort of discussed that also. This is linked to the next slide. So we had about 3 slides around communication, and it also linked together really well. So the purpose of this one was to learn the different types of communication skills, but and to think about how these can have a positive impact on friendships. So we discussed all these skills on the presentation. So starting with putting yourself in other people's shoes. From this, we spoke about empathy a lot, and that's the main theme that came out of that. And I think Johnny mentioned empathy as well. I guess the importance of seeing things from both sides, very important when, communicating. We spoke about tone of voice. How we say things is just as important as what we say. So maybe being a bit more calm when you're saying things, maybe having saying it in a slower tone, in a slower way, but also having a more neutral voice. We also discussed I statements, such as, and we sort of spoke about, avoiding using the you word and concentrating on how you feel rather than deflecting. And we spoke about this maybe having a more positive impact on the communication, as the person will be more likely to hear how you're feeling. And then again, it won't cause those arguments or any sort of negativity around the conversation. And also this links to being specific. So they're really focusing on the main points to make sure everything is understood so that there is no misunderstandings. So yeah, I think it's very important to bring all these slides together. and they sort of all go hand in hand, and they all give examples of, receiving good communication, but also giving good communication and doing it in a much healthier way. And we also spoke about it being okay to speak up when you are feeling bothered about something, but maybe doing it in the right way. But also making sure that, you don't always have to stay in friendships, that friendships are a choice and that everyone deserves to be heard and respected, but making sure that we do it in the right way and that we communicate how we feel.
Have you got any
Perfect, yeah.
questions?
So any questions?
Okay, we're going to session 2.
Okay.
So the next slide is the overview for session 2, which is what makes it difficult to make friends, how your thoughts and emotions can impact on friendship, what is anxiety and how does this impact on friendships, how can we manage anxious feelings. We're only going to go through a few of these slides because this actually is similar to the anxiety train the trainer workshops. What we've done is just related it to friendships. So if you want to go over the anxiety workshop slides, please speak to your BICS link worker.
Okay, so in session 2, we discussed the difficulties of making friends. What makes it difficult for some people to make friends, and what might they be thinking or feeling. So we also obviously we looked at the thoughts and feelings that come with it, and how these thoughts and feelings can feed back to the difficulties in making friends. So this discussion activity can be done via a group or a paired discussion. In our sessions, students mentioned that this can be due to feeling nervous, shy, afraid, not being sure what to say, a lack of confidence or self-esteem, the other side not making enough effort, a fear of rejection, and not knowing how to approach friendship groups that are already established. So to help with this, we provided some conversation starters to promote some healthy conversation. So here on the slides we have some kind of basic conversation starters that young people might adapt or quote unquote like take inspiration from to use in their interactions.
So we then we use this slide, which was, I guess, a very good slide for us to use and talk about. The purpose of this was to understand negative automatic thoughts and how these thoughts can have an impact on how we feel and how we behave. So what we done first was discuss what NATS was, and we sort of gave these sort of triggers to the students. So the trigger situation to the students, and we used Lee. So we used Lee as the example sort of throughout sort of all the workshops, just so we had something to refer back to. We then asked the students why they think Lee might have got negative thoughts from these triggers. So one of the sort of triggering situations for Lee was Lee was walking past a group of people and people were laughing at him in school. The other one was Lee has not yet received a party invite from a friend, but others have. So we asked the students how Lee might have been feeling in these situations, and things such as worry, fear, maybe sad, anxiety, doubting himself, feeling left out. That was the sort of themes that came out from the discussion. We also spoke about, negative automatic thoughts popping into our heads and maybe not having control over them. And, maybe normalizing this because, we all have those thoughts that pop into our head. So after this, we then sort of completed the task. And we sort of thought as a group about sort of the negative responses and the thoughts, such as the ones on the screen. So for the first example, they are laughing at me, and then we spoke about a more balanced thought. So they are sharing a funny meme, and that's why they're laughing. So there was nothing to worry about. So we discussed these things, but we also spoke about anxiety in these situations and how anxiety can be, high and very, very uncomfortable. But we also spoke about the psychoeducation around anxiety, teaching them that, even though we will feel anxious, eventually that sort of spike, that sort of feeling of uncomfortability will sort of come down eventually. And we spoke about maybe things that we could use to help ourselves feel less anxious in these situations when communicating maybe our balanced thought or sharing our balanced thought with someone. So we spoke about positive self-talk to feel better about a situation and not being as negative. We spoke about breathing work and grounding to manage anxiety. We also spoke about conversation starters that Johnny mentioned to sort of get a better understanding of a situation if you are communicating with a friend. We also spoke about taking time out to think about the balanced thought rather than reacting straight away, which would be linked to sort of the behavior that Johnny sort of spoke about earlier as well. Although we done this as a group, this can be done in pairs, and then sort of the discussion can be done that way. I thought this was a really successful slide to do and to deliver, as it was very interactive. The students were able to talk about their ideas and bounce off each other, so that was really good.
So we asked the students if they knew of any famous people who have anxiety. We showed them this slide, and asked if they knew any of them. They didn't know any famous people that had anxiety, and the students were really surprised by some of these people on this slide. I usually share this story of Emma, the tennis player, because a lot changed within her sports following her letting people know she has anxiety. Usually after a game, the winner usually talks to the media. Emma was very anxious and couldn't speak to the media. She didn't really give a reason why, but was forced in some way to say that she had anxiety because of the backlash from the media, and that got this sport to think about actually do we need to put so much pressure on people to actually come out and speak? So the reasons for showing this slides and having this discussion is to normalize and show how common anxiety is. Also to show that people can manage anxiety and get on with their daily lives. So we go on to session 3. So this is a trigger warning for you. It's also a trigger warning for the young people. The trigger warning for you is that we will be speaking about self-harm and suicidality in this session. And this is the trigger warning on the screen that we shared with the young people. So this is an overview of the session. The session is part of BICS Suicide and Self-Harm Prevention, which is in line with the government's suicide and self-harm prevention strategy for children and young people. It is the first workshop where we have included self-harm and suicidality. BICS staff will come to deliver this session if you need them to, if you feel like you're not able to. The aim is to break down stigma, send the message to students that it's okay if you or your peers have thoughts of suicidality or self-harm, to let them know that they're not alone. It's okay to speak about it, to let them know that there is support and how to access it. Now, we worked closely with the school to think about the well-being of the students. The school sent letters home to the students to get consent from their adult or carer. The students were told in advance about this topic, and they were given the choice about whether they wanted to attend this particular session. Students were told they can leave the session if they wish. We checked in with them during the sessions. The trigger warnings, so we had the trigger warnings in the first session, the second session, and then in this session at the beginning, and then just before we started talking about the subject. At the end of the session, the students were reminded about where they can get support, and a school member of staff came in and spoke to students to remind them about where they could get support in school.
So yeah, now I would like to ask everyone to think about your experiences of working in a school. What are the signs of when a student is struggling emotionally, even if they don't say directly? Again, so please use Menti to share your thoughts regarding this. I'll just give everyone a minute or two to do this. Okay, so you might see them getting tearful, anger, feeling and looking sad, and starting to isolate themselves. Okay, so these are very typical kind of symptoms that a student is struggling emotionally. So thank you for that. Just gonna give another like 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Okay, we'll move on then. So yeah, so those were some really good examples. So those examples actually coincide with some of these. So, like tearfulness, anger or irritability, withdrawal from friends or isolation. But we have some other almost like a typical list of signs. So withdrawal from friends or usual activities, sudden changes in mood or behavior, frequent lateness or absence for school, a drop in academic performance. We mentioned this already. Talking about feeling hopeless or overwhelmed, sudden increase in risk-taking or impulsive behavior, changes in appearance or hygiene, wearing long sleeves in summer. So that might be trying to hide open wounds and marks from self-harm, or expressing thoughts like "I don't matter" or "No one would care if I wasn't here." So these are typical indicators of emotional struggling, but it's not an exhaustive list. So there might be other reasons or other symptoms for emotional struggles. So it's really important. That's why it's really important that for school adults to be curious and ask students questions, to gain a better understanding of what's going on. We'll explore this a bit more further in a second. And obviously, when it comes to risks like self-harm or suicide ideation, please do follow the safeguarding policies that are in place. That will be our expectation for you guys. Okay.
So I'm not sure if you know these two young people. Can you put up your virtual hand if you know them? Or any one of them? Or I should say, if you know their story. Okay, this is Brett Bradner in the bottom and Molly Russell in the top. Both of them are 14. And Molly was bullied at school, and she started to search for ways to commit suicide. After a while, she started to get the algorithms come through, giving her ideas of ways to commit suicide. And unfortunately, she did take her life. At the inquest, it was shown that she had thousands of searches and thousands of responses from the algorithm, but there was nothing no warnings to come up to say that there's concerns here. And so her parents are doing a lot of work around changing that. Brett was groomed online. He was playing games with his friends and some other people he didn't know. One of the people that he didn't know separated him from his friends and encouraged him to come in a separate chat room. He groomed him. He actually said that he was living in the USA when he was actually living in the UK. And he said to Brett that he would give he said to Brett he owned a business in America, and he would like Brett to take to help manage the business, and that he was coming to England so they could meet and speak together. Brett's mum did have concerns, and she did contact the police, but they couldn't take any action, they said, because there was no crime committed. The person then invited Brett to his house and unfortunately took his life. And so the aim of telling these stories to the students is to help them understand how people are groomed, how emotions like loneliness and trust can influence decisions, the importance of speaking up when something doesn't feel right, encourage them to think about their own online safety and their own mental health. This is important because the online platform is moving so fast. Just recently, I heard in the news that a teenager started to use ChatGPT as a friend and asked for ideas to commit suicide, which led to them taking their life. So in the workshop, we split the students into two groups. One, we asked to think about what Brett was thinking, what he might be feeling based on the other slides that we used previously, and explore why he made the decision to explore what may have led him up to make the decision that he did. And we did the same with Molly. We had another group who was Molly. Brett's group said he might have felt special, important, trusting, that the person on the other end was a friend because he had known the person for a while. So yes, Brett was groomed for several months. Brett was going to own a business and earn a lot of money. He might have thought that he was going to be rich and felt excited. Molly may have felt lonely, sad, had no one to speak to. She may not want to tell anybody that she was being bullied because she didn't want to be a snitch. And that's a word we hear a lot when we're working with young people. At the end of the discussion, we checked in with the students. We explored with the students where they could get where they would get support, and also where they can get support. We also asked one thing they will be taken away with them. The students we also asked for one thing they will be taken away from the discussion. The student said to speak to someone, it's okay if you have these thoughts. Be careful about what you share online. People online may not be who they say they are. Look out for your friends. How bullying may affect others. So yeah, this was a really powerful session, and it was. I think one of the things that sticks with me is one of the students saying that um, we don't want you don't want us to end up like Molly and Brett, which is why, when we asked why we were doing this session. So just a reminder for you, it will be anti-bullying week on November the 10th to the 14th. Please speak to your BICS link worker to see how they can support you during this week.
Hey, so I'd like to do a quick quiz with everyone. So feel free to, so either raise your hand or put your answers in the chat. So yeah. Question number one, self-harm is only when you cut yourself. Is that true or false, do you think? And I'll try to read the chat as well. Self-harm is only when you cut yourself. Is that true or false? Okay, just gonna give another few seconds. So if you answered false, that'll be correct. So self-harm is when you is when you hurt yourself as a way of dealing with very difficult feelings, painful memories, or overwhelming situations or experiences. It does not, it includes cutting, but it's not only cutting. There are other forms of self-harm as well. So question 2 is, talking about self-harm will make them do it more. Again, please put it in the chat or raise your hand. Is that true or false? Just gotta give like 10 seconds for this. Okay, so if you answered false, that would be correct. So talking about self-harm will not make a person do it more. In fact, it might help the person to let other people know how they're feeling. Final question, self-harming is a mental health problem. So again, 10 seconds, true or false? Is a statement true or false? So if you answered true, you would be wrong. So false. Self-harm is not a diagnosed mental health problem. It is a behavior often used to deal with difficult thoughts and experiences, and it might be related or it might correlate with mental health difficulties, but it's not a diagnosed mental health difficulty. So the reason why we wanted to do this quiz in the workshop is to challenge misinformation and reduce stigma regarding self-harm. And this will hopefully in turn promote safer, informed conversations that encourage help seeking and emotional well-being. So in the sessions, we also went over some facts about self-harm. Again, this is to help students understand what self-harm is, why people do it, and how to break down the stigma. So here's some facts about self-harm. So the first big one is, when a person self-harms, it's not their fault. People who self-harm are usually or can be ashamed of what they do and don't want to speak about it. And that people self-harm for very different reasons. So they might see self-harm as a way of dealing with something difficult that's happening in their lives or something that's happened in the past, or they might not even know why they're hurting themselves. Young people that we speak to, within our professional capacity, often tell us that they self-harm because they want to show how they feel without saying out loud. They might want to distract themselves from how they're feeling. It might be a way for them to cope with or escape from painful feelings, thoughts, or memories. It might be as like a punishment for something they blame themselves for. It might be to help themselves feel more connected with themselves or the world, or to create a reason to look after themselves, like caring for wounds and whatnot. Okay, so next slide. Sorry.
Okay, so we're not going to show this video because of time, but this is a video about Childline. It's a really good video because a lot of times when we speak to young people, they usually say the reason why they don't use Childline is because they don't know what's going to happen when they call. Childline also has online facilities, so that's even better now. But so this video actually talks about what happens when you call Childline. It goes through a young person's experience and actually how they got over being worried, and it tells young people what will happen when you actually call. Sometimes I've actually been in sessions and called Childline with the young person, just to make that first step. So here's some ideas of how you can approach the conversation with students around risk, concerns around mental health and suicidality. So first of all, obviously, you speak about confidentiality, and that's really important because if you do have to share information, then at least you can go back and say, do you remember when we spoke about confidentiality? And I explained that if I was concerned about you, I would have to share this information with someone. Well, I am feeling concerned about you now. Be curious, ask open questions rather than closed questions. Like a question could be, if you could describe your week in one word, what would it be? Are there times during the day that feels harder than the others? Questions that may relate to teens, maybe if your feelings had a voice, what would it say? Is there something you wish you could say but haven't felt able to? So in terms of suicidality, you could ask, sometimes when people feel overwhelmed, they have thoughts of hurting themselves. Is that something you've been feeling? Are you ever feeling so low that you feel like harming yourself? Have you had any thoughts about wanting to end your life? It's really important that you ask this direct question so that things are not misinterpreted in the conversation and it's quite clear that you're talking what you're talking about. Also, students may not actually volunteer this information. For self-harm, you can ask questions like, sometimes people hurt themselves when they're feeling overwhelmed. Is that something you've experienced or you're experiencing? Have you self-harmed before? It is important also to ask this question as well. Have you self-harmed? As I said, because you don't want to you don't want either of you to misinterpret what you're saying. You want to be clear. Keeping safe, few questions you can ask is, do you feel safe right now? Do you have access to anything you can use to hurt yourself? I am worried about you and want to ensure you are safe. So we'll need to speak to, and whoever you need to speak to. Problem solving questions are, have you done something before that helped in this situation? Sorry, have you done something before that has helped in a similar situation? What help you do you feel? What help you feel? What will help you feel better now? And what's helped you feel better when you're struggling? Would it be okay if we explore some support options together? Who do you usually talk to when things are tough? And do remember to take care of yourself too. Talking about mental health can be emotionally taxing. Seek support from your colleague, supervisor, and wherever else you would seek support. Okay, this is an analogy. Analogies are really good to use with young people because it helps them to understand and express emotions in a simpler way. And it makes it easier for them to remember what they have discussed and what they might need to do. So this is an analogy that I use with young people, and I describe our bodies as like pots on a fire, with water in it. And I ask, what will happen if the fire's high and there's a lot of water in the pot and the lid is bubbling away? And they say that the lid might flip off. And I say our bodies are like that. We take in so much every day and a lot of things that stress us. Some things we know, some things we don't, but it bubbles away in us. And after a while, our bodies are really good at telling us when we have too much. And that might come out in the way of crying, getting angry, and this really normalizes and helps them to understand what might be going on with them and why they might be showing specific behaviors. And I explain, when you come to therapy, what you're doing is we're turning down the fire a little bit so that the water can boil. We're lifting the lid slightly. Steam will come out, so some things might feel difficult to talk about. But as you talk about it, although the water may go down, it won't go away completely. So we can never say that we can resolve everything for them, but we can help them to manage it. So the pot will still be boiling, but it'll be boiling in a manageable way. There's also a similar analogy for the stress pot, and we can send you a video that we use for that.
So this next slide, I guess the purpose of this slide was to make students aware of the importance of seeking help, especially when around this session, and we're sort of thinking about suicide and sort of self-harm. So we asked the students where they can go to get help and support from. Before sort of showing the slide, the common sort of answers were, parents, school, maybe speaking to a friend, and then we also sort of then sort of went through this list on the slide. So writing things down, like negative about feelings and ripping up the paper, which would sort of help with taking a load of things, similar to that pot analogy, maybe listening to music. And then maybe if you are sort of going through a self-harm, we spoke about some of these strategies here. We also asked a question to students about which was what can get in the way of seeking help, because this is one of the barriers to people not maybe seeking help. And these are some of the things that came from that discussion. So some of the students spoke about being afraid, some judgment from maybe peers, parents, um, not knowing where to get help from. So feeling stuck in that sense, and maybe feeling ashamed that they're going through this. Um, so with all these words and all these thoughts, we really try to normalize all these feelings, and then you really speak about the importance of getting support. As we wouldn't, we wouldn't want someone's mental health to become sort of uncontrollable, and then sort of referring back to sort of those case studies that we Yvonne spoke about earlier. So though this topic was very sensitive, the students really engaged. Um, and yeah, like I said, what really helped was the case studies, as they really understood the importance of seeking help through what we spoke about in the session. And as Iman said, that was sort of very powerful.
So we made time for reflection at the end of the sessions, and during this discussion, we gave out the colouring pens, pencils, and the fidgets for the students to have. And we just reflected on how difficult this session has been, and also the students' thoughts and feelings around the sessions. Um, and the students expressed how they were feeling, and how they found it difficult, but how important they felt it was, and how helpful they found the two examples. And we also, this is where actually the person we asked why they thought we discussed this, and this is where that young person said, because you don't want us to end up like Brett and Molly, which I felt was really powerful.
Yeah, in the reflection, we also sort of reiterated that it's understandable to feel this way, but also to understand that other people might be feeling this way. So have that sort of empathy. And we sort of kept that theme throughout the workshop. Spoke about, that you have nothing to be ashamed of. It's normal to have these feelings and emotions. Again, the importance of getting help and support. Otherwise, things might not change and get worse. And simply just maybe speaking to someone can just help you turn a corner rather than all those other things we spoke about on the last slide. We also stayed back at the end of this session in case students wanted to speak privately and just to give them that space.
Any questions?
Yeah, any questions?
Okay, so we're going to session 4. So with session 4, what we did was we were just bringing everything together from what we learned, what the students learned over the previous 3 sessions. We made this really interactive. We designed different games that the students could play. We split them into 2 groups, and they had to make decisions as a group and only give an answer when they had agreed as a group. And each group was given points for each correct answer. We said it's okay to say they don't know. The sessions help the students to practice communication, working together, hearing differences of opinions, making decisions. These are all skills that help to build to build and strengthen friendships.
Yeah, so the first thing we began with in the session was just a general discussion to see what they had remembered from the last three workshops prior to this, because we was running this every week. It's just a time to sort of reflect and see what they can remember, and sort of to set the tone of the 4th workshop. Also to sort of refresh their memories and help them re-engage in the sort of reflective tone for the rest of the session. So the first activity we done was the 4 corners, where we'd ask them a question, such as what are the signs of anxiety, and then around the classroom would have 4 pieces of paper with different answers on them, and as a group they'll need to walk around the room deciding which answer would be the correct one and stand by that paper. So this was a very good activity. Again, we made it interactive, we made it fun, we made it collaborative for the students, and they really enjoyed this one. So that's one of the things that we done. We done other activities such as cutting exercises and ordering exercises. So one of them was breaking the cycle of anxiety. So putting the cycle of anxiety in order. Again, giving them a time frame to do this. Again, working collaboratively as a team, discussing ideas, and getting that done within a certain amount of time, but also making it a bit of fun. We also done the exposure ladder, where again we gave them a sort of an overall goal, and they had to create their own steps on the ladder to reach that ultimate goal. And again, there was a time limit as well. We also done the hot cross bun, which was arranging the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in the right order. So we done that as well. Yeah, and again, this was just something to, I guess, get them collaborating, and get them re-engaging what we done from the previous sessions. So we moved on to the last thing, which was at the end of the session, which was a Kahoot. I'm not sure if you're aware of Kahoot, but it's sort of an interactive sort of quiz program. And we thought this would be really good as, it's a bit different to a normal quiz. You get points for if you answer the question really quickly as a group, you can get extra points on the platform. So we thought that this would be really fun for them, really exciting, something a bit different. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to do that because Wi-Fi internet difficulties. So we done it as a standard quiz. But again, we made it fun. We made them think of a team name. They'll get extra points for that. And we asked them questions from everything we had sort of done throughout the workshop. So really bringing everything together. So it was on friendship, it was on suicide and self-harm. There was questions on anxiety, mood, social media, etc. So that's what we done at the end, and they really enjoyed that.
Yeah, so that is basically the content side of the sessions covered. I was wondering if before we kind of move on to our final discussion about how the students fed back, I was wondering if you guys could also feedback using the post-session outcome measures, the QR code over here. And and Theo has put it on the chat as well. So I'll just give everyone about a minute or so to complete this, and then we'll move on to the workshop feedback from the students and also any potential questions. Okie dokie. Let's move on.
So we designed a booklet with everything that we covered, well, most of the things that we covered in the workshop. And it's an answer, a question and answer type of booklet. So what the students can do is that they can cover up the answers and actually look at the questions and answer them and see if they're correct by uncovering the questions. They've also got a bit at the bottom where they can take notes. And we sent this to the school. So they had that as a reference for what we did in the workshop.
Oh, you're on mute, Johnny.
Sorry, I was muted. So on the screen here, we have the workshop feedback in bar chart form. Students also gave anecdotal feedback as well, and they were overall quite positive. So They found the groups helpful and understand different friendships, also how to manage friendships difficulties, and they also learn how to voice what they want to say. And they said they gained better understanding of mental health regarding suicide ideation and self-harm. So in terms of the kind of like feedback form that they completed, the blue bar here is the mean scores of their pre-session, and orange is post-session. And it's basically how confident they are in the following like 7 statements from 0 to 5. So we see an improvement in students knowing what makes a good friend, students knowing how to deal with peer pressure, understanding that meeting new people can trigger anxiety, feeling more confident in knowing how to cope with anxiety, and knowing how to identify the signs and symptoms of low mood, and understanding that social media might have a negative impact on friendships. For the last one, knowing where to go for help for friendship difficulties. Overall, we didn't see like an increase in confidence. But as we see, like it was already quite high to begin with. So we'll let it go. Okay. Any questions?
Okay, we've come to the end of the workshop. We hope it's been helpful for you. As I said, we will be sending out, you'll get 2 separate slides. You'll get the slides that we actually did in the workshop, and then you'll get these slides as well. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I'm just going to stop recording, or does Jordan have to do that?
I think you can stop.